Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Brewing. As always, it's presented by Blake the Attorney Mason. We've got so much to talk about. We got college basketball season underway. College football has the first rankings come out for the college football playoffs. We got Bengals and Bengals issues and so much more. We got our gambling segment where my best bet last week blew up in my face a little bit. I thought I was going to backdoor it, but I couldn't quite do that. And we've got my favorite portion of the podcast where you can ask me a question on any topic. Just go to the Xverse, hit up the hashtag AskSkinnyAnything. Rick, we got a lot to get to. Let's get to it.
Yeah, we've got a lot, Skinny. We'll start with the Bengals, who placed running back Zach Moss on injured reserve with a neck injury. Zach Taylor said the running back will likely miss the remainder of the season. And then they went out and they did something that they never do. They made an in-season trade, giving away a seventh-round pick to the Bears for running back Khil Herbert. Let's start with that, Skinny. Is this move, Khil Herbert, is it an addition to just have some insurance from a blocking perspective back there so Joe Burrow isn't getting killed, or is this a guy they think can be a weapon in the backfield?
No, I mean it's a backup body, and you have to have it. They don't have a lot of trust in Travion Williams. Kendall Milton just came up off the practice squad. This guy at least has some proven things he's done in the NFL as a runner and as a receiver. He's returned kicks. Yeah, and for a seventh-round pick, it makes sense. This move would not have been made. Let's be clear. If Zach Moss were healthy, this move would not have been made. But they made it, and they could have sat back and said, "Oh no, let's just go get another, running back off of a practice squad of another team," just like they did with Kendall Milton. And suddenly you're full of practice squad running backs behind Chase Brown. I think Khil Herbert can give you 5 to 8 touches a game, and maybe those will be some positive touches. Again, I just don't think they trust Travion. I like Travion. I don't think you can get him in heavy doses, but as a runner, I like him. I don't know about so much in the pass blocking department. But listen, what Chase Brown did this past Sunday is not sustainable, carrying it 27 times and catching it 5 times, 32 touches. He's a tough kid, but he was sitting in his locker after the game, Rick, and I was waiting to talk to him. And I give these guys their time, let's get you undressed and get a shirt on, all those things. And he just leaned back. And it was all he could do just to get his socks off. And so when we got done, I said, "You're that beat?" He goes, "I'm beat, man. I'm beat." And so he also took a shot to the ribs too. So that probably was affecting him a little bit. But just watching a guy struggle to get his socks off after the game because he's exhausted, you can do that some. You can't do that a ton.
Yeah, and he's not the biggest guy to begin with. I mean, that was one of the concerns, is pounding him between the tackles too often might not work in the NFL with him. But we'll see where that goes from here. I don't think there's a lot more to make of the running back situation until we see, like Khil Herbert, they were talking about, he might even play as soon as Thursday night's game in Baltimore. Joe Burrow was saying, yeah, I mean, he's right next to me. I can just tell him what he needs to do on any given play. How much do you think we might see him in there?
A little bit, just a spell, maybe. Maybe they trust Travion, and Travion gets the first crack in the backup role. I mean, you usually have 3 backs up on game day. Last week, Kendall Milton got elevated from the practice squad to become the 3rd back. So now Herbert becomes, I guess, technically the 3rd back. But if they feel like he's grasped enough things, or whatever small package they have for him, I think you'll see him in there some. He did arrive on Tuesday before they held their Tuesday night practice. In fact, I was talking to Jermaine Burton. We'll get to that in a second, when he actually I think he was 2 lockers down, and I look over and he's got one of those wheelie, suitcases. He looked like he just wheeled himself off the plane and came right to the locker room and go sign his, or go talk with management and get himself squared away. So yeah, I think see him some. He's not going to be a difference maker.
Yeah, we'll talk about Jermaine Burton in a second, but a little bit more injury news. Eric All, the rookie tight end who seemed to be emerging for this team, has a torn ACL. He's gone for the rest of the year. And what's really disheartening about this injury is he's dealt with so many injuries throughout his college career prior to getting here.
Yeah, the same knee last year in October is the one he hurt at Iowa, and that's the one he rehabbed, came back. And it was weird when he caught the pass, and right before he went down, I even went, ooh, because you could just see something didn't look right. And then I thought, well, maybe he just slipped, and that's why. And then he gets up and goes right back down, and you realize this is not going to be good. It's unfortunate, because he was becoming a real, not weapon on that offense, but a real key part of that offense with his blocking ability, the fact that he is a pretty nice pass catcher, the fact that it allows you to use Mike Gesicki in more of the receiver role, even if you go 2 tight ends, and that's now taken away, unfortunately. I guess the one part that the saving grace is the three tight ends that that you were counting on before the draft are still there: Tanner Hudson, Drew Sample, and Mike Gesicki, and they each kind of have their own role. It's just disappointing because I think Eric was one of those kids who he could do all of it. I mean, he could pass block, he could run block, he finished blocks, natural receiver, all the things you really want out of a tight end. You want him to be able to do all of those things, and just the sad human part of a kid who busted his butt to come back and actually be when they took him, Rick. I think I even said after the draft that it felt like the reason they took Tanner McLaughlin was that this was going to be a redshirt year for Eric All. Hard to believe he could come back that quickly from the knee, and he did, and he was effective, and he was good. And so that's the human part of it, of just, knowing he went through that process to be ready to play, and now he's got to go through it again.
Yeah, that's really it. It's the human side for him. You feel bad for him because he was already starting to show some promise, and there is the upside of what he might have been able to come for this team. I think the fact that they do have a few more bodies in that tight end room that are capable, and the fact that he hadn't done a lot yet to this point. I mean, he had made a few plays here and there, but it had done nothing to where you could say, yeah, this is a big loss for the Bengals at this point. But it is unfortunate for him and for what he might have been able to develop into down the road. And now you're just at the point of, you're like, how much trauma can this guy's body take? How many times can he keep coming back from these significant injuries and play at a high level?
Yeah, that's the thing for me. I mean, listen, he's a football player, right? He's gonna do what he needs to do to rehab and come back. But then it's the anxiety of, is this going to happen to me again, or when is this going to happen to me again? And I think that's the unfortunate part to this.
The Jermaine Burton situation has gotten interesting over the course of the last week, Skinny. Before that, it was a lot of just like fans clamoring for a guy that clearly didn't seem to be in the picture. But then after last week, we heard Zach Taylor and others talk about how they were going to get him more involved, how he was going to be a bigger part of the game plan going forward. And then it sounds like he was late to meetings later in the week, and he ends up as a healthy scratch on Sunday, doesn't get to play in the game. Do we have any confirmation on what actually happened? Was he just late to meetings, or?
No, that seems to be what the case was, but we don't have confirmation. And I do think it occurred both Friday and Saturday, not just one day, not just the Saturday. I think it occurred the Friday, and then the Saturday may have been the last straw, whatever that was. I got a chance to talk to him yesterday. It was not a very long conversation. I got a lot of stock answers of, I just got to be better. Charlie Goldsmith from the Inquirer, he and I were the ones talking to him. And when Charlie asked him what happened on Saturday, the answer was, I just got to be better. I mean, that just shows you that this is a different cat, man. And Jamar Chase, I thought, was really good yesterday in his podium time. Honest to a degree about, I've talked to this guy. I got nothing else to say. I mean, you're a grown man. It's time to grow up. He even talked about his own transgression back in his rookie year before the Ravens game. And then he went and balled out for 201 yards. And I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of it was kind of funny that I was able to play like that and do it. He goes, but then again, it's not funny. I should have done it, and I learned my lesson. And good for him. I mean, good for him for the honesty of it, and good for him for learning the lesson. But
Was he Chase also the one who said, I let my play apologize for it? I didn't get up and apologize in front of the team.
Yeah, I thought that was a good answer, actually.
And that's exactly right. None of the grown men in there want to hear you get up and say, like, sorry, I'm supposed to show up on time. They all know that already. Show up and be a professional and play when you're called upon. And
I think he admitted, he hasn't been late. I mean, he learned his lesson from that, and good for him for that. There's something wrong with Jermaine Burton, man. I don't know what it is, because you were given an opportunity. They were putting him in the game plan. Zach even said after the game, he was in the plan. I think he was going to get significant snaps. Maybe a 50-50 split with Yoshi, but he was going to get significant snaps. And then the transgression, whatever it was on Friday, I think he still was going to be in the plan. And then Saturday is like the final straw. Like, dude, if you're getting this opportunity, you can't do this. So something isn't wired right there. And that's something that honestly, I don't think we should take lightly here, that maybe he needs to get checked out. And I mean that sincerely, that if you just, that there's just something that's not clicking there. He's not normal. And that's unfortunate.
It seems that everyone around the team is saying he needs to grow up. And so it does sound like it's something as simple as he's not showing up on time.
That's easy to say, though. But
I think there would be more concern, or there would be more interesting things being said by the guys in the locker room if he was like blowing up and losing his mind and they thought he was like off kilter in meetings or something, or if he was a problem in the locker room. It seems like it's like this guy just can't get out of his own way. He can't show up on time to things. He can't be a mature adult right now. And that can be fixed, I think. Now, it might be at some point like this guy just doesn't get it, and that clearly seems to be the case right now. Of course, we saw the picture floating around of him at the casino, looked to be in his pajamas. Was there any confirmation on if that, like, what was going on there? And like, guys are allowed to be at the casino for the record. Like, it's kind of weird when we get into this thing where we're taking pictures of guys out living their life, but you do have to think, if that was taken on one of the last couple of days when he was going through all of this, it almost seems like a cry for help of like, you don't know what to do with yourself, so you just locked yourself inside a casino all day, like to stay out of trouble, or what?
That's kind of my point, Rick. I think there is something there that is crying out for help, and I mean, the whole casino picture then makes you open the door of, is that where he is at all hours of the night? That's why he's not sleeping, or he gets in at 5 o'clock in the morning because of an all night gambling bender, and that's why he can't get out of bed. Is he chasing losses? Is it a one time thing? It opens all those questions up, and
and those might not even be fair at all, but the problem is that's what you do when you go out and you hang out in a casino when all this is going on, assuming that picture was taken within the last few days. I mean, I guess it could have been an old picture that's getting recirculated.
I don't know. He had the salute to service sweatshirt on from the game, or hoodie on from the game.
Oh, wow. I didn't even realize that. So it would seem to be, it had to be a recent picture then, if that's the case.
You'd think.
Skinny, do you think there's, I don't think so, but I saw this a little bit online. He made the comments last week when people were asking about him being a bigger part of the game plan. He said, like, hey, I can't put myself in the game. Like, I already should have been a bigger part of the game plan. Do you think there's any backlash to those comments potentially?
No, because a talent usurps all. They think he's a talent, and they're trying to get the most out of that talent. And listen, with the T. Higgins injury situation, so I said this on the podcast with Mike Petraglia, so I'll say it on this one too. I fully expected Zach after Sunday, it was going to be addressed, and it was addressed. I thought we were going to hear him announce a suspension, and then the light bulb clicked of, no, because if T can't play on Thursday, they're going to probably need this guy, and they're going to do everything they can to get him to the finish line to prepare and work and be ready to play in that game, because they're going to need him if T can't play. So can't play if you suspend him, and so here we are. We may find out tomorrow night he's inactive again because of something. I don't know. Or maybe he goes and he does ball out, catches 7 for 122 because he's a talent. And, it's just the weirdest situation. But I listen, we've been talking about this all year with this guy, right? Of fans want him on the field. And I've made the point of, obviously he's doing things that aren't endearing himself to the coaching staff, whether it be practice habits, whether it be asleep in meetings, as Al Michaels alluded to, whether it be, maybe being late to meetings, whatever. They're not playing him because they don't think he can play. They're not playing him because he's not doing the right things. Well, folks, now you know.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say I'm glad that this happened, because it's not a good thing. I hope the guy's all right mentally and everything, but in some ways it does feel for this team, this franchise, the fan base right now, it was almost good that these things came to light, that everyone understands, okay, it's not just like Zach Taylor has no clue what's going on and he refuses to put a talented player on the field. This guy is unreliable, and they can't get him to do the bare minimum to meet the requirements to get on the field when they desperately need more talent at his position. Where are you at with all of this now? Are you at the point where you're saying this is a huge miss by the Bengals scouting department, taking a major risk on a pick that they really couldn't afford to do that with? Or is this a guy that they just got to have some patience with and could end up still being a really nice get?
I think the latter, but I think the patience has to be wearing very thin at this point. There can't be any more transgressions, man. They're just, you should be now at zero tolerance with this, because I think you've tolerated it probably too much. And I get it. This team's in the playoff hunt. They're battling. This is the NFL. You're paid to win games. You're not paid to teach a lesson. I mean, that's what high school athletics is teaching a lesson. This is the pros. And so I get it that in the perfect world, I guarantee you Zach Taylor would love to sit this guy for some games and either say you're suspended or just each week just go inactive. But you know what? Right now, your choices are this. If T. Higgins doesn't play, it's back to Yoshi, who's been meh, and it's Trenton Irwin, or it's Jermaine Burton with the potential to make a big play or two, right? What are you going to do?
Not great options right there.
No.
One thought on this Baltimore game, or on last week's game, because you guys did already recap that, you and Trags did, and I listened to all of that podcast, but it felt like coming out of that one, you were kind of like, okay, so what? The Raiders stink. That it's a meaningless win. Joe Burrow almost seemed to have the same sentiment of like, who cares? There's not much to be excited about after that game. We did what we, not even did what we were supposed to do. We just got a win, thankfully. I would push back a little bit on that because I don't think we've seen Joe play like that and this team completely control a game, even against the bad teams they've played so far this year. So while, yes, it doesn't say anything about their ability to beat the good teams left on their schedule, and they still have to prove a lot, I would say this was clearly a step in the right direction, seeing Joe be this otherworldly good without any of his extra weapons, by the way. He didn't have hardly any of the extra guys out there to help him, and he was this good, and they dominated the game.
Yeah, and let's not forget this. He threw 5 touchdown passes, right, to 4 different receivers. You know who one of them wasn't that didn't catch a touchdown pass? Jamar Chase. I mean, that's pretty darn good if you had that. That's a quarterback elevating people, which is what the great ones do. And to your point, I thought he did that. But I think from an overall standpoint, I get it. I got to get where he's coming from, the frustration that he realizes, guys, we did some good things. We didn't do enough good things. And if we don't do more good things against good teams, we're getting beat. That's what it felt like to me we can't leave anything on the board because we don't trust our defense against good teams. We have to get it done. And I think that's kind of the frustration level that he was at.
And I get that. And I agree with that perspective of it, but I was a little surprised almost from your and Trag's perspective that you guys seem to think that wasn't anything. You didn't seem positive at all about that performance. And I was like, I think they showed some things in that game that they really haven't shown all year, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think the Raiders are awful. They're just.
I do too.
I think they're awful.
But the Bengals haven't dominated awful teams this year.
No, that's fair.
They lost the freaking Patriots, who are awful.
And listen, it's one of the first games. It's the first Bengal win I've gotten a chance to write this year. I could write the lead, after the third quarter.
Right.
That was a nice place to be for me, for goodness sakes. But no, I get it. But listen, I'm just a big show it to me. I mean, if this is going to be a team that we really take seriously for the games after the bye, split these next 2 because 9-8 may get you there. I mean, they're only a game out of the wild card at the moment, as goofy as that sounds. I mean, they're only 1 game out of it. And we've seen them at crossroads of seasons before. Even go back to Jamar's rookie year, the Super Bowl run. They were kind of scuffling around and all of a sudden got a couple of big wins that you didn't expect them to get and took off. The year that they ripped off the 10 straight victories, kind of scuffling around, and then they took off. This game Thursday, if you pull this off, I think it's a huge springboard. Then it is Katie bar the door because the games after the bye, I think all 6 of them are winnable. Then if you beat Baltimore with a kind of a mini bye weekend before you have to go out and play the Chargers, you have the confidence to go out and beat the Chargers. So just prove it to me, though, because against the good teams, Rick, a couple of them were close losses. I get it. Kansas City was right there. First Baltimore matchup was right there. Both were right there. But you're also 0-4 against teams that are quality teams on your schedule.
I totally agree with that part of it. They have to prove themselves against the good teams, and they'll get that opportunity again on Thursday at Baltimore. But again, to your point about we've seen them do this before. If I'm a Bengals fan right now, I'm looking for the signs. Like, this team is clearly flawed, but so was that team that went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and they got hot, and Joe Burrow caught fire and took them there. I'm looking for signs that might be able to happen with this year's team. I think that game on Sunday, while it's a very small one, it's just a minor first step. Joe Burrow looked otherworldly good in that game without needing really anyone else to do it. He was just doing it by himself out there. That's a sign to me that maybe it's still in there with this team. Maybe with that guy back there at quarterback, you always have a chance still.
Yeah, I think the only issue, and if it was somebody, even a good team other than this Baltimore team, just because of my God almighty, are they so good on offense?
Yeah. Well, with that being said, what's the level of optimism, 1 through 10, that the Bengals can pull off a win here on Thursday night?
3, maybe a 2. I asked Lou Anarumo this yesterday about just kind of the I said, listen, I know it's apples and oranges here, but those great Kansas City offenses, the AFC Championship game matchups with them when they had Tyreek and they had all those other speed guys and they had Kelsey, and Mahomes has always been Mahomes. I'm sure they put a different stress, but what's the stress level with this? And he said it's a ton because there's nothing that they don't do well. The running back runs it, the quarterback runs it. You got all these speedy receivers. Oh yeah, and they added a guy who torched you earlier this year, Deontay Johnson, when he played for Carolina. He had 7 catches for 83 yards in that game. In fact, he's the guy that got Cam Taylor benched for a period of time in that game, and they've added him to the mix. man, oh man, it's just it's a really well-oiled offense. You just have to hope that they don't bring their A game on a night for whatever reason, commit a couple of ill-timed penalties. Somehow maybe Lamar throws a ball that's tipped and you get a pick and you steal a possession like that. Because honestly, you're not forcing them to punt very often, in my opinion.
No. And the first game between these two teams was an awesome game. It was back and forth. It was exciting. It ended up being 41-38 in overtime. Do you expect another shootout like that? Do you think it's going to be high scoring again?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if we'll get in that range, but I think we get high 20s, low 30s, to be honest with you. The Bengals have to score, in my opinion. They have to win this. I think you have to at least get to 30.